Hello and welcome to Global Scan, your one-stop destination for a roundup of all the major global developments of the week. This week, regional powers were hosted by Russia to discuss ways to help crisis-ridden Afghanistan. The US has offered unconditional talks with North Korea after DPRK test-fired a new ballistic missile from a submarine. And the World Health Organization has projected that the COVID-19 pandemic could easily drag on deep into 2022. All that and more in Global Scan. Let's get started with the top stories. India achieves historic landmark in the fight against COVID-19 vaccination. Administers 100 crore vaccine doses. PM says we are witnessing the triumph of Indian science, enterprise and collective spirit of 130 crore Indians. WHO's Director General and world leaders congratulate India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But the World Health Body also warns that the COVID-19 pandemic will go on for a year longer than it should. WHO DG's advisor urges rich countries to prioritize vaccinations in lowest income countries, as less than 5% of Africa's population is vaccinated compared to 40% in most other continents. 10 regional powers back call for a United Nations donor conference to rally aid for crisis-hit Afghanistan at the Moscow talks. Taliban seeks defreezing of Afghanistan's assets by the US. Leaders urge the Taliban to form an inclusive government. North Korean state TV airs images of Tuesday's test launch of Pyongyang's submarine-launched ballistic missile. US and Europe condemn the move, but the Americans offer to meet the North Koreans without any preconditions, saying Washington has no hostile intent towards Pyongyang. Floods in Nepal and Kerala and unceasing volcanic eruptions in Spain. Climate change poses fresh challenges, but the Kremlin announces Russian President Vladimir Putin will not be attending the upcoming Global Climate Conference in Glasgow without giving any reason. Let's begin with news from Asia. India attained a historic milestone in the fight against COVID-19 this week. 1 billion COVID-19 doses have been administered in 9 months in India from 16th January to 21st October. After India crossed the landmark of 1 billion doses, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi lauded the efforts of the scientific community and the collective spirit of the nation. He visited the Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital in Delhi, a central government-run hospital, where he interacted with the healthcare and frontline workers involved with the vaccination drive, boosting their morale and crediting them for their contribution to the drive. Here's a report.
भारत का टीकाकरण लिख रहा एक नया इतिहास है।
And with this, India achieved the landmark figure of 1 billion vaccinations, an achievement that most of the world, including developed nations, find unimaginable. The most effective weapon in the battle against coronavirus is vaccination, and by inoculating 1 billion citizens, India has created history in a record 9 months under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Congratulating the nation, Prime Minister said that India now has the armour of 1 billion vaccinated citizens to fend off the worst pandemic to grip the world in 100 years.
100 साल में आई सबसे बड़ी महामारी का मुकाबला करने के लिए देश के पास अब 100 करोड़ वैक्सीन डोज का मजबूत सुरक्षा कवच है। ये उपलब्धि भारत की है, भारत के प्रत्येक नागरिक की है। मैं देश की वैक्सीन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंपनियां, वैक्सीन ट्रांसपोर्टेशन में जुड़े कर्मयोगियां, वैक्सीन लगाने में जुटे हेल्थ सेक्टर के प्रोफेशनल्स, सभी का खुले मन से, हृदय से बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं।
The Prime Minister visited the Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital in the national capital to boost the morale of health workers and interacted with the people who came for vaccination. He also went around the vaccination centre. Prime Minister interacted with Divyang Arun Rai.
मेरा ये पहला डोज।
अरे इतना देर लगा दिया?
इसलिए कि अभी तक लापरवाह था और मैं ये सोच रहा था कि क्योंकि मैं बनारसी हूँ
बनारस के एमपी ने लगवाया तब मन नहीं कर गया।
आपने पहले लोग समाज में विकलांग शब्द जब कहते थे तो बड़ा मन में कष्ट होता था और अपमान महसूस होता था, लेकिन आपने दिव्यांग नाम दे करके हम लोगों को बड़ा दिव्यांग बना दिया।
Prime Minister also interacted with nursing officer Christina from Manipur. He inquired about the challenges they face in carrying out their duties.
अब तक कितने लोगों का वैक्सीन किया?
सर, जब से वैक्सीनेशन शुरू किया था मेरा ड्यूटी आ गया तो लगभग सर
15,000। अरे वाह
सर, मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा कि
तो अभी तो कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल भी बहुत आया होगा।
हाँ जी सर।
चलिए बहुत बहुत बधाई आपको।
In an endearing moment, a young girl who had come for her vaccination sang an inspirational number while interacting with the Prime Minister.
गाना गा
गाना गाती। अच्छा एक सुनाओ, देशभक्ति का कोई गाना सुनाओ।
मेरे वतन के लोगों जरा घूम लो पानी जो शहीद हुए उनकी जरा याद करो कुर्बान।
The security guard at the hospital thanked the Prime Minister for raising their morale with his Main Chaukidar who called.
सबसे बड़ी बात सर, जैसे आपने कहा ना कि मैं देश का चौकीदार, तो वो चीज़ का बड़ा गौरव है सर। नहीं बहुत गौरव है। देश के जितने भी हमारे सिक्योरिटी के लोग हैं, इन सब लोगों का आपने गौरव बढ़ा दिया सर।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's interactions covered every corona warrior who are a part of the vaccination chain, and these corona warriors expressed their elation at meeting the Prime Minister.
आज 100 करोड़ हो जाएगा वैक्सीन के लिए, तो इतना मतलब अच्छा फील हुआ उनको कि हमें वैक्सीन, हमें उसको अच्छे से गाइड किया हमने कि हमें वैक्सीन लगवा के आपको पूरे देश की आर्थिक स्थिति को हमें ठीक करना चाहिए और हमें आने वाले वायरस को फैलने से रोकना चाहिए।
उन्होंने पूछा कि कोविड के टाइम में आपने कैसे ड्यूटी की, आपके घर वाले आपको मना करते रहे होंगे, तो मैंने कहा सर मना तो करते थे, लेकिन मन में एक सेवा का भाव था कि जब हमारे देश के प्रधानमंत्री लगे हुए हैं सेवा में तो हम क्यों नहीं कर सकते हैं।
The vaccination drive began on 16th of January 2021, and on the very first day, over 91,000 doses were administered. The second phase started on the 2nd of February 2021, covering frontline workers. The third phase of immunization began on the 1st of March 2021 to include those between 60 years and 45 years of age, as well as those with comorbidities. The Prime Minister also took the jab on the same day. To further boost the coverage, all people above the age of 45 were included in the campaign from April 1st. The nation began administering the doses for people above the age of 18 from 1st of May. The journey, which began 9 months ago, witnessed achievements on several fronts. The target of 100% vaccination of at least the first dose remains in sight, with the pace of vaccination increasing over time. Bureau Report, DD India.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the third international airport of Uttar Pradesh in Kushinagar on Wednesday, terming it a tribute to the devotion of Buddhist society around the world and underlining the special focus of the government to develop places associated with Buddha. Kushinagar is an important Buddhist pilgrim destination. The Kushinagar Airport will connect the region associated with different phases of Lord Buddha's life, such as Kushinagar, Sarnath, Bodh Gaya and Kapilvastu, to the rest of the world. A delegation from Sri Lanka, led by Minister Namal Rajapaksa, and diplomats from Myanmar, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, Bhutan, South Korea, Sri Lanka, Mongolia, Japan, Singapore and Nepal were present on the occasion. Prime Minister Narendra Modi recalled the connections between India and Sri Lanka. He spoke about Emperor Ashoka's son Mahendra and daughter Sanghamitra taking the message of Buddhism to Sri Lanka. Here's more.
भगवान बुद्ध ने कहा था, अपदीपो भव। यही भारत के लिए आत्मनिर्भर बनने की प्रेरणा है। यही वो प्रेरणा है जो हमें दुनिया के हर देश के प्रगति में सहभागी बनाने की ताकत देती है।
The auspicious occasion of Abhidhamma Day, The place, the Mahaparinirvan temple in Kushinagar. The day symbolizes the end of a 3-month rainy retreat, Varshavas or Vasa for the Buddhist monks. During Varshavasa, the monks who are always on the move stay at one place and pray. The reason for this season's pause is to not hinder the processes of nature in any way, so that the sprouting seed is not crushed by their movement. Wednesday saw Buddhist monks from Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, South Korea, Nepal, Bhutan, Cambodia all converge at the sacred land of the Buddha. Prime Minister Narendra Modi offered Chivar Dan to these monks on the occasion. Highlighting the universality of Lord Buddha's teachings, Prime Minister Modi said that when the world is facing acute environmental and climate change issues, solutions can be found by following Buddha's path.
वर्षावास न केवल बाहर की प्रकृति को प्रस्फुटित करता है, बल्कि हमारे अंदर की प्रकृति को भी संशोधित करने का अवसर देता है। आज जब दुनिया पर्यावरण संरक्षण की बात करती है, क्लाइमेट चेंज की चिंता जाहिर करती है, तो उसके साथ अनेक सवाल उठ खड़े होते हैं। लेकिन अगर हम बुद्ध के संदेश को अपना लेते हैं तो किसको करना है, इसकी जगह क्या करना है, इसका मार्ग अपने आप दिखने लगता है।
Buddha resides in the soul of humanity and connects different cultures and countries. Prime Minister's message was simple and universal. The sense of responsibility that comes from Lord Buddha's teaching is the key to overcoming the toughest of challenges and surging ahead for welfare of all.
बुद्ध का संदेश पूरे विश्व के लिए है। बुद्ध का धम्म मानवता के लिए है। इसलिए आज का ये दिन हम सभी देशों के सदियों पुराने सांस्कृतिक संबंधों को नई ऊर्जा देने का भी दिन है।
Inaugurating the Kushinagar International Airport, Prime Minister Modi gave the devotees visiting the Mahaparinirvana temple a gift to remember for the times to come. The Kushinagar International Airport has been constructed at an estimated cost of 260 crore rupees. The airport is an attempt to connect Buddhist pilgrimage centers around the world.
किसान हो, पशुपालक हो, दुकानदार हो, श्रमिक हो, यहाँ के उद्यमी हो, सभी को इसका सीधा लाभ मिलता ही है। इससे व्यापार कारोबार का एक पूरा इकोसिस्टम यहाँ विकसित होगा। इससे इस क्षेत्र के युवाओं के लिए रोजगार के भी अनेक नए अवसर बनेंगे।
Prime Minister Modi said Buddha's influence, visible in western, eastern and southern parts of our country in equal measures, will travel to the world.
भगवान बुद्ध ने जहां पहला उपदेश दिया, वो सारनाथ की भूमि भी 100-250 किलोमीटर के दायरे में ही आ जाती है। जहां बुद्ध को ज्ञान प्राप्त हुआ, वो बोध गया भी कुछ ही घंटों की दूरी पर है। ऐसे में ये क्षेत्र सिर्फ भारत के ही बौद्ध अनुयायियों के लिए ही नहीं, अनेकों देशों के नागरिकों के लिए भी एक बहुत बड़ा श्रद्धा का और आकर्षण का केंद्र बनने जा रहा है।
In keeping with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of Buddha diplomacy and connecting with the immediate neighborhood and beyond, the occasion of Abhidhamma Divas took an entirely new meaning. In a post-COVID world, the boost to tourism with a spiritual connect will certainly lead to long-term sustainable development. In a symbolic gesture, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also planted a Bodhi tree sapling in Kushinagar. The Mahabodhi tree at the Sri Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya is where Lord Buddha is said to have attained enlightenment. Vishal Baristo, Ashwini Mishra and Rajesh Raj's report for DD India.
The Taliban has had some success in rallying support from 10 regional powers at the Moscow talks for a United Nations donor conference to help crisis-ridden Afghanistan. Leaders, a part of the talks, called on the world to pitch in with aid to save the Afghans, while urging the Taliban to make their government more inclusive. But the Taliban insists that it has formed an inclusive government and it wants the US to unfreeze Afghanistan's assets. Afghanistan's new Taliban rulers won the backing of 10 regional powers at talks in Moscow on Wednesday for the idea of a United Nations donor conference to help the country stave off economic collapse and humanitarian catastrophe. Addressing the third meeting of the Moscow format consultations on Afghanistan that was held in Moscow on Wednesday, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, said that the Russian side has noticed positive efforts made by the Afghan interim government.
We
note the efforts they are making to stabilize the military political situation and ensure the smooth operation of the public governance system. Sustainable peace in Afghanistan remains a pressing goal. We believe that forming an inclusive government which fully reflects the interest of all ethnic and political forces in the country is the key to achieve it. We call on the Taliban, this was also discussed with the delegation, to do their utmost to prevent any more from using the territory of Afghanistan against the interest of third countries.
The
minister also called on the international community to provide more economic and humanitarian aid to Afghanistan.
We believe that it is time to mobilize the resources of the international community for efficient financial, economic and humanitarian aid, in part with a view of preventing a humanitarian crisis and stopping migrant flows. We are convinced that the United Nations should play a central coordinating role in pooling international efforts on the Afghan issue. The Deputy Prime Minister of Afghanistan, Abdul Salam Hanafi, who led the Taliban's delegation at talks in Moscow, said that Talibs need supporting peace in Afghanistan. Taliban leaders called on the US to unfreeze Afghanistan's assets during a news conference in Moscow, saying that the money is for the Afghan people. But the Taliban's resurgence has stirred international fears of a return to the hardline form of Islamist rule in the 1990s, when they hosted Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda movement and carried out egregious human rights violations, including public stonings and the marginalization of women at work and in schools. DD India. Heads of several nations expressed concern after North Korea test-fired a new ballistic missile from a submarine on Tuesday. Pyongyang's state TV channel broadcast its images the next day. While the US and Europe condemned DPRK's action, the United States also said that it has no hostile intent towards North Korea and is ready for talks without any preconditions.
First, they confirmed verbally and later released these videos. North Korea's state-run television on Wednesday aired still photographs showing a new ballistic missile being launched from a submarine. This was launched from the same submarine involved in a 2016 test of an older SLBM, according to North Korea's state news agency KCNA. The United States has offered to meet North Korea without preconditions and made clear that Washington has no hostile intent towards Pyongyang.
Our position remains clear. The DPRK must abide by the Security Council resolutions, and it is time to engage in sustained and substantive dialogue toward the goal of complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We have offered to meet the DPRK officials without any preconditions, and we have made clear that we hold no hostile intent toward the DPRK.
Ireland, Estonia, and France have expressed concern about the test of a submarine-launched ballistic missile.
We firmly condemn this provocative action, which constitutes a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions. We welcome today's discussion at the Security Council and the Council's continued attention to the DPRK's ongoing nuclear and missile activities and other WMD programs which represent a serious threat to regional and international peace and security. Monday's launch forms part of a pattern of provocations by the DPRK.
North Korea fired at least one ballistic missile off its east coast on Tuesday, officials in South Korea and Japan said. As Seoul opens a major arms fair, spy chiefs meet to discuss the nuclear standoff, and South Korea prepares for a space launch. The ballistic missile set off alarm bells across the region. The launch was reported by military officials in South Korea and Japan and comes just after South Korean envoys met with US officials to discuss the nuclear standoff on Monday. Pyongyang has ramped up its military activity dramatically in recent weeks, and Tuesday's launch marks its latest missile test. The missile was launched shortly after 10 a.m. local time from the sea in the vicinity of Sinpo, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said, where North Korea keeps submarines as well as equipment for test firing missiles. DD India.
Let's now take a look at news from the Americas. In Haiti, protesters blocked the streets of Port-au-Prince on Thursday with rocks and tree branches and burnt tires to protest against the widespread fuel shortages. Haitian trucks had initially planned a strike to protest against the shortages, but Thursday's demonstrations were largely led by motorcycle drivers angry that they could not work for lack of fuel. Authorities also recently prohibited the sale of fuel in 5-gallon containers, which has traditionally served as a mechanism for finding gasoline during shortages. Drivers wound through the side streets of the capital on Thursday, often forced to turn around after coming across barricades. Anger over a weakening currency, double-digit inflation, soaring crime and graft accusations lodged against public officials have sparked violent and sometimes deadly protests in the Caribbean island. Now we get your news from Europe. Ali Harbi Ali, the son of an ex-media advisor to a former Prime Minister of Somalia, has been arrested by British police under anti-terrorism laws following the killing of lawmaker David Ames. More in this report.
The killing of Conservative MP David Ames is being treated as a terrorist incident by UK police. The interrogation is underway, and during the course, Ali Harbi Ali, the son of an ex-media advisor to a former Prime Minister of Somalia, has been arrested by British police under anti-terrorism laws following the killing of the lawmaker David Ames. The 25-year-old British man has been arrested at the scene on suspicion of murder. Police said they believed he acted alone. They have used additional powers under the anti-terrorism laws to detain him until October 22. Sir David was stabbed multiple times at his constituency surgery in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex on Friday. The incident took place while he was meeting constituency voters in a church. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson visited the place where lawmaker David Ames was stabbed to death. Johnson, Interior Minister Priti Patel, and leader of the opposition Labour Party Keir Starmer were among those to lay flowers in tribute to Ames at the scene of the murder. Johnson and Starmer stood side by side in a moment of silence before leaving. Ames is the second lawmaker in a little over 5 years to be murdered while out meeting constituents after Joe Cox was shot and stabbed in June of 2016, a few days before Britain voted to leave the European Union. DD India.
Jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny on Thursday dedicated a European Parliament Human Rights Prize he won a day earlier to anti-corruption fighters around the world. The European Parliament on Wednesday awarded Navalny the prize named after Soviet dissident Andrei Sakharov for his anti-corruption efforts in Russia. The Kremlin responded saying it could not be forced to respect the move of the European Parliament. Navalny is serving 2.5 years in jail for parole violations in an embezzlement case. He reacted to the prize with a tweet saying, "I dedicate my prize to all kinds of anti-corruption fighters around the world, from journalists to lawyers, from officials and lawmakers to those who take to the streets to support this fight." The recognition awarded to Navalny is likely to further sour relations between the 27-nation bloc and Russia. These ties have been on the decline for years, especially following Moscow's 2014 annexation of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula. Environmental challenges keep mounting, be it floods in Nepal, extremely heavy rainfall in Kerala or other places. The need for urgent climate action is paramount in the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow, beginning at the end of this month. But the Kremlin has announced that Russian President Vladimir Putin will not be attending the event without giving any reason. Here's a report.
Floods are wreaking havoc in Nepal. Triggered by 3 days of heavy rainfall, authorities have warned of more rain in the next few days. Forecasting for the next 2 days, the Department of Hydrology and Meteorology said there are chances of heavy rainfall in some places and light to moderate snowfall in the eastern mountainous areas. Amid this, meteorologists have attributed activation of 2 weather systems at once for the change in weather pattern of the Himalayan nation. Nepal's Ministry of Home Affairs has mobilized Nepalese army, Nepal police and armed police force for the relief and rescue in the needed areas. In India, the state of Kerala is bracing for more rainfall. The Indian Meteorological Department has sounded an orange alert in few districts and a yellow alert in several others. The IMD has said due to the influence of a cyclonic circulation formed to the south of Tamil Nadu coast, Kerala is expected to be under the sway of heavy rainfall till 24th of this month. As situation remains grim, relief camps have been set up across the state. Meanwhile, Cumbre Vieja volcano on Spain's La Palma island is spewing ash and lava into the air and threatening the biodiversity on the island. The volcanic eruption has entered its second month. Streams of lava flowed past houses on the Spanish island of La Palma on Thursday. Rivers of red-hot lava have engulfed almost 800 hectares of land, destroyed about 2,000 buildings and many banana plantations since the eruption began on September 19th. The eruption has disrupted lives of many and has forced over 6,000 people to flee their homes. The rising incidents of natural calamities have raised concerns among many global leaders who are ready to meet for COP26 at the end of this month. However, Russia's President Vladimir Putin will not attend the UN COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, the Kremlin said on Wednesday. No reason was given for the decision not to attend, but a Kremlin spokesperson said climate change was an important priority for Russia. COP26 takes place in Scotland's largest city from 31st of October to 12th of November. TD India.
All the global sporting action now in Sportscam. Here's a roundup of all the action for soccer fans from the Champions League.
Riyad Mahrez scored twice and Cole Palmer got his first Champions League goal for Manchester City as Pep Guardiola's side put in a super performance to sweep aside Belgian side Club Brugge. The visitors were slick and confident from start to finish as they moved to within 1 point of Group A leaders Paris Saint-Germain with their second win in the competition. Paris Saint-Germain's Kylian Mbappe and Lionel Messi found a groove as they inspired their side to a 3-2 comeback victory at home to RB Leipzig in a Champions League thriller on Tuesday. Mbappe was the first to strike and Messi had the France forward to thank for his second half double after the League One side had fallen 2-1 behind following goals by Andres Silva and Nodi either side of the interval. The result left PSG top of Group A with 7 points from 3 games, one ahead of Manchester City, who demolished Club Brugge 5-1 away earlier in the night, while Leipzig remained pointless. Vinicius Jr. scored 2 goals, including a brilliant solo effort as Real Madrid thrashed Shakhtar Donetsk in the Champions League. An own goal by Sergei Krivtsov gave Real a 1-goal lead in the break. Vinicius scored twice in 5 minutes after the restart, sweeping in from close range before beating 3 players to add a brilliant third. Rodrigo swept in Vinicius's pass before Karim Benzema slid home late on. The 21-year-old has now scored 7 goals in the 9 appearances for Real in all competitions. Victory means Real are second in Group D, level on 6 points with leaders FC Sheriff, who lost 3-1 at home to Inter Milan. AC Milan fell to their third successive group stage defeat on their return to the Champions League with a 1-0 loss away to FC Porto. A goal from Luis Diaz is all that separated the sides as the Estadio do Dragão and Stefano Pioli's men have a mountain to climb if they are to reach the knockout stages. Ajax surged past Borussia Dortmund 4-0 on Tuesday to take a big step towards advancing to the Champions League knockout stage for the first time since the Dutch club reached the semi-finals 3 seasons ago. A third win from 3 games gives Ajax a 3-point lead in Group C ahead of Dortmund, whose often unreliable defense couldn't cope with Ajax's smart movement of the ball. Sports Desk, DD India.
And now a look at stories that make news but not headlines in Beyond Headlines.
The COVID-19 pandemic has affected lives of a number of people across the world. Lifestyle of people have transformed largely, and many have been facing issues like stress and anxiety. Amid this, Spain has come up with a crying room, which aims to remove the stigma in society attached to mental health, crying and seeking help. Phones are placed in one corner with the names of people visitors can call when they are feeling down. The signboards in this place read, "Enter and cry. I too have anxiety," among others. In Japan, performers balancing long bamboo poles arrayed with paper lanterns displayed their skills in front of Akita Station. The performance is usually held every year in August as the annual Akita Kanto Festival. The event this year was held on a smaller scale with about 30 performers tested for the virus and wearing face shields. An Indonesian cafe is jumping on the bandwagon of global Squid Game craze by recreating some of the games played in the Netflix drama in its cafe space. In a dark room, patrons are greeted by staff dressed like the army in the 9-part thriller, holding toy guns and ushering them towards the end of the room, where the red light, green light game starts immediately. Shouting out commands in Korean, the staff immerse themselves as the drama characters, while patrons willingly compete in games that feature no prizes. Over 200 customers visit Cafe Strawberry daily, drawn by the games replicated from the drama and to try food like the Dalgona candy made popular by the hit series. An astounding amalgamation of modern art and new technology could be seen as the Prague city centre was illuminated by a light and laser show. The spectators described the show as colourful and intense. The festival aims to bring modern art and new technology to spectators, with the city serving as a canvas. Festival director Martin Posta said that this edition of the festival was the first time when augmented reality displays were available to spectators via a smartphone app. British fashion designer Vivienne Westwood and Nigerian author Ben Okre read out their letters to the earth as part of a campaign urging action against climate change. The 80-year-old designer, known for her environmental activism, Okre and children's choir SOS from the Kids were among those taking to the stage at the Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London to read their letters. In her letter, Westwood called for a land-based economy and opening up land corridors for wildlife. Booker Prize winner Okre read his previously published letter, The Age of Catastrophes, and joined his partner in a poetry dance performance. Their 5-year-old daughter read her own letter. A sword believed to have belonged to a crusader who sailed to the Holy Land almost a millennium ago has been recovered from the Mediterranean seabed thanks to a sharp-eyed amateur diver. Though encrusted with marine organisms, the meter-long blade, hilt and handle were distinctive to notice after undercurrents apparently shifted sands that had concealed it. According to the Israel Antiquities Authority, the sword is believed to be some 900 years old and will be put on display after it is cleaned and restored. Two barber brothers in India are turning heads with their creative yet realistic hair designs, which depict everything from the Taj Mahal to Michael Jackson on their customers' heads. 29-year-old Rajvinder and 31-year-old Gurvinder have become celebrities in their town of Mandi Dabwali with their eye-catching art. These brothers claim that they can depict anything from Hollywood and Bollywood celebrities to international sports stars on people's scalps. A robotic dog stole the limelight at the Millipol Defense and Security Trade Fair near Paris on Tuesday. The 22nd edition of Millipol Paris takes place from October 19th to October 22nd and plays host to dozens of countries, including Israel, United States, and Switzerland. According to the makers of the robot dog, Ghost Robotics, the robotic dog costs under $1 million. The makers said that the technology has advanced in the past few years and has enabled the robot dog to keep its balance in difficult terrain. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
A look now at some other global happenings in Fast Forward.
Former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo has vowed to continue in politics until his death. On Sunday, he launched a new party that comes with months after his acquittal by International Criminal Court. Gbagbo was president from 2000 to 2011, returned to Ivory Coast in June after being acquitted in 2019 by Netherlands-based court on war crimes charges. In El Salvador, at least 4,000 people took to the streets to air a range of complaints against President Nayib Bukele, from adopting Bitcoin as legal tender to firing Supreme Court judges. Holding banners and signs rejecting Bitcoin, people marched through capital San Salvador. Bitcoin officially became legal tender in the Central American country in September. Bukele proclaimed himself dictator of the Central American country on his Twitter account last month. In Nigeria, gunmen killed at least 43 people in an attack at a village market in northern state of Sokoto. Sokoto Governor Aminu Waziri Tambuwal said the assault began at a weekly market in Goronyo on Sunday and continued. Police confirmed that bandits attacked Goronyo. Meanwhile, officials today said African country security forces have killed 10 armed bandits in recent operation against the hideouts of bandits in northwest state of Kaduna. In limbo in southern Mexico, migrants are reportedly considering a new caravan of people heading out on foot towards Mexican border with US. Authorities in Mexico have sought to keep these migrants in Tapachula, in Mexico's southern state of Chiapas near Guatemala, but tensions are boiling over. Britain and New Zealand have reached agreement in principle on free trade deal designed to reduce tariffs, improve services trade, and take London one step closer to membership of a broader Trans-Pacific trade agreement. The groundbreaking deal was agreed over a virtual call between British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern after 16 months of negotiations. Supporters and critics of Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso took to streets of Quito on Wednesday to protest in favor of and against labor reforms proposed by the government. Followers of the conservative president gathered outside the presidential palace waving banners in a show of support for his economic labor policies, as well as decree of a state of emergency to confront drug-related violence. Hundreds of workers demanded to freeze fuel prices and end the government's relationship with International Monetary Fund, whose agreement will involve disbursement of US $1.5 billion this year. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
Here's what made history in this week in the yesteryears in History Scan.
British Broadcasting Corporation was formed on October 18, 1922 to launch a nationwide network of radio transmitters. The company was formed by a group of leading wireless manufacturers including Marconi. The first BBC transmission was on November 14, 1922 from the station 2LO at Marconi House, London. On October 18 in 1931, the American inventor Thomas Alva Edison died. In his lifetime, he held over 1,000 patents, the most famous being the electric lamp, the phonograph, and the motion picture projector. On October 18 in 1989, East German leader Erich Honecker was stripped of power, ending 18 years of iron-fisted rule as the government grappled with growing public demands for a free society. The Communist Party hierarchy replaced its 77-year-old leader with Egon Krenz, a Honecker protege and the youngest member of the ruling Politburo. On 19th October in the year 1739, England declared war on Spain over border lines in Florida. The war is known as the War of Jenkins' Ear, as the Spanish Coast Guards cut off the ear of British seaman Robert Jenkins. On 19th October in 1987, the stock market crashed, precipitating one of the first financial crises of the modern globalized era, when the Wall Street stocks plunged a record 508 points on a Black Monday. On 20th of October in 1973, the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhists, Dalai Lama, arrived in Britain to administer vows to people. It was the first time he had been to the UK. On 20th of October in 2011, ousted Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi was captured and killed during the Battle of Sirte. On 21st of October in 1993, Burundi's President Melchior Ndadaye died in an abortive military coup. On October 21st in 1945, women voted for the first time in France. On October 22nd in 1906, Paul Cézanne, the French post-impressionist painter, died. Among his best-known works are Card Players and Mont Sainte-Victoire with Large Pine Trees. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
The WHO's projection on the COVID-19 pandemic, US FDA's go-ahead for booster doses of COVID-19 vaccines is a mix and match between Moderna's and Johnson & Johnson's shots and more in COVID Scan.
The World Health Organization warned COVID pandemic will go on for a year longer than it needs to because poorer countries are not getting vaccines they need. Senior advisor to DG World Health Organization, Dr. Bruce Allward, said it meant the COVID crisis could easily drag on deep into 2022. Dr. Allward appealed to wealthy countries to give up their places in the queue for vaccines in order that pharmaceutical companies can prioritize the lowest income countries instead, where they were with their donation commitments made at summits such as G7 meeting this summer. Less than 5% of Africa's population have been vaccinated compared to 40% on most other continents. US Food and Drug Administration authorized booster doses of COVID-19 vaccination from Moderna and Johnson & Johnson as per mix and match strategy. US FDA said Americans can choose a different shot than their original inoculation as a booster. The decision paves way for millions more people in the United States to get additional protection from highly contagious Delta variant of the virus. Last week, an advisory panel to the FDA voted to recommend a third round of shots of Moderna vaccine for the same group. The panel also recommended a second shot of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for all recipients of the one-dose inoculation at least 2 months after receiving their first. About 11.2 million people have so far received a booster dose, according to data from CDC. US Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas has tested positive for COVID-19. Mayorkas, who is fully vaccinated, is experiencing mild congestion. He has isolated himself and working from home. This is at least the second time COVID-19 has interrupted Mayorkas' work schedule since taking office. As Russia's daily COVID deaths and cases hit new record highs, Russia has proposed to shut workplaces for a week at the start of November. Deputy Prime Minister Tatiana Golikova has proposed that October 30th to November 7th be deemed non-working days to combat the rising numbers. Golikova said people should have to present QR codes on their mobile phones to show they were vaccinated or had recovered from COVID to get access to public events or places. Sharp rise in number of cases and fatalities has led Kremlin to urge people to get vaccinated. Registered over 80,60,000 cases of COVID with more than 2,25,000 fatalities. In Brazil, senators accused President Jair Bolsonaro for crimes against humanity. Earlier, they dropped a recommendation from their draft report that he be charged with genocide and homicide over the handling of the country's COVID outbreak. Senators leading the congressional probe met late on Tuesday to discuss a report prepared by opposition Senator Renan Calheiros and agreeing to remove the homicide and genocide accusation due to what one senator called technical reasons. However, the draft report still needs to be voted by the Senate Commission and could be vetoed and altered. Health chiefs in the UK have been urging the government to legally enforce some of COVID prevention measures as coronavirus infections in Britain continue to spike over 40,000 mark daily. However, Britain's Health Minister Sajid Javid on Wednesday resisted calls from doctors despite warnings that hospitals are on the edge of being overwhelmed. Global Scan Desk, Lead India.
We leave you now with images that stayed in news this week. I take your leave. Namaskar.